Welcome back. My name is Ray Morris. I'm founder and CEO of Dads for Special Kids, a small nonprofit organization in Phoenix metropolitan area serving families that have a child with special health care needs. Our main focus is to encourage the dads to stay in the marriage to keep the family intact. You're watching Step 2 of Emergency Disaster Preparedness for individuals and families that live with functional needs. We're just going to go ahead and get started on Step 2. Hopefully you've watched Introduction, Step 1 and 1.5 and are up to speed. Also, don't forget to download the guidebook so you can fill it out as we're talking about stuff, but also so you can go back later and review things and fill in your own answers for the questions so that you can develop your own emergency disaster plan. So Step 2 is making a plan. Okay, starting out with, identifying what emergencies and disasters your area is prone to. Like here in the Phoenix metro area, our big things are fires, house fires, thunderstorms, power outages. And power goes out in June and July and August down here. It's pretty miserable when it's 110, 115 degrees. You know, it's a dry heat, but it's still hot. So, and like our son Zachary, he doesn't do well in the heat. He's more prone to seizure activity in the heat. So that's something we have to take in consideration, and we'll talk about that a little bit later also. And also wildland fires. And a wildland, fire comes through. Is your home susceptible to it? It may not be susceptible right to the fire itself, but what about smoke blowing through the area? How is that going to impact you, your family members, individual with a functional need, and their quality of life? Those are things that you need to talk about and look at. So as you look on page 13 of your guidebook, it talks about, for our area, I wrote out those four things, but we also look at how do you learn about it? How do you learn about a fire? How do you learn about a power outage in your area? And for us, power goes out, lights are out. Okay, that's telling us. Actually, it's not the lights; it's when the air conditioner that goes out. Then we know we got a problem. And what are we going to do? Where are we going to go? What needs to be done, and who needs to be contacted regarding those things? Okay. Also, what items do we need? If the power outage goes out, what are some things that we need to do in our house, to make things more comfortable and more accommodating for each member, but also for Zachary. So we look at, open up windows, we have a little generator, start it up so we can run at least fans so we can have some air blowing through. Also, he watches his Thomas Tank Engine and Barney and Blue's Clues and Bear in the Big Blue House. So he wants to keep doing those things. We're okay for a few hours without that, but after a period of time, he's going to want to be watching those things. So laptop, computer, DVD in it. How do we charge up the laptop with time, after a period of time? And so those are things we look at. And we also look at, what is our breaking point of how long can we stay in the home in this environment until we come to the point where we need to go somewhere else, and where do we go to? Those are things that we need to look at. So you have to look at your particular area and what are you prone to. If you're up in the north, in the northeast, up in northern states, winters are a big thing. Snowstorms coming through, coldness. Okay, so you got to look at those kind of things. So you have to go through each one of those and look at it and figure out, what is your answer and for each topic or each disaster that you're prone to. Okay. Page 14 we start talking about is your home layout, laying out your home. Okay, what rooms are where, how are you going to evacuate each room, having 2 exits, egresses we call them, for each room. Where's your meeting locations, who's going to need assistance in evacuating the home. Also, we start looking at is, sheltering place and what that is, and we'll talk about that in a little bit further. Do you have a general spot in your home that's going to be identified as your meeting place? Where are you going to congregate? Like for us in our home, the power outage goes out and we lose our power. We're not going to be staying in individual rooms. We're going to go to the common area of the home. It's more open area, more air movement, and that's going to be the place that everybody's going to be hanging out. And for us, heat rises, so we don't want to be upstairs because it's going to be hotter in the home, so we'll be downstairs. Sleeping arrangements at nighttime. How is that going to look if the power's out? Do we want to stay in our rooms? It's going to be hotter. Will Zachary, sleep downstairs and not in his room where he's very comfortable with? And with autism, those individuals like routine and want to keep that routine going. So how do you change that and accommodate it? And also at the same time, how do we as the parents maintain our sanity and our health while dealing with this kind of event and dealing with Zachary and him? So So those are all things that you need to address as a group, as your support, with your support system. Okay, page 15 talks about your exits. Looking at your exits in your home, having 2 exits, where the primary route's out of that, and what's the secondary route out of each room in each area of the home, and what is the meeting place for that exit route. For our home, if you go out the back of the house, you can't get to the front, okay? Especially if the house is on fire, because there's very narrow walkway between the fence and the house. So we have a meeting place out back of the house and also one in the front. How do we let each other know that we're out of the house, in the back of the house, or in the front of the house? Those are just little things you need to talk about, okay? Now also we get into now talking about your sheltering in place and what sheltering in place is, okay? Sheltering in place is exactly what it means. You're staying in one spot in your home, okay? You need to pick a place in your home that is furthest from any doors, outside doors, and outside windows. Sheltering in place is used when say a chlorine leak, okay, a 1-ton cylinder is leaking off of a truck on the roadway or something like that, and a chlorine gas is coming through a neighborhood. We can't evacuate everybody in that area, so we want you to shelter in place. So for our home, our sheltering in place is it's a closet underneath the staircase. It's a very small area. It's probably maybe 4 feet by 10 feet long, maybe actually 8 feet. It's pretty narrow, okay, and long. So that's our place. What's it going to look like, all 3, 4 of us in the home being in that small area for an hour, hour and a half if need be? Okay, so you need to pick a spot in your home that you're sheltering in place. It's an area where you could be safe and secure from the outside environment. We want people away from the outside walls, away from windows and doors, because distance and space becomes your friend in a sheltering in place. Okay, because you want to be away from the outside airs. So if you're up by a door to an outside wall, you're going to have more air movement in that area, greater chance of becoming contaminated or exposed to that hazard that's outside. Okay, so sheltering in place, that's what it looks like. If you have an inside or a central room in the house that you can go into and close the door, great. Okay. Also, sheltering in place could be if you don't really have a central area, that you go to the outside doors, windows areas, and you put plastic over there and duct tape around the windows and doors to reduce any air movement going through there. Okay, so that's things you need to look at. You need to spend a little bit of time thinking about it, talking about it, and realizing, okay, what kind of supplies you're going to need if you ever have to shelter in place. For us in our home, it's basically, like I said, the closet underneath the staircase. If we choose not to do that, I have large black trash bags that I can cut and make bigger, duct tape them around the doors, to reduce the air movement, and also around the windows. Okay, but you want to be as far away from the outside windows and doors as possible. Okay, so that's what sheltering in place looks like. Okay, so now pick an evacuation location. Okay, how are you going to evacuate your neighborhood? How are you going to evacuate your home? How are you going to get out of town? Thinking about the different routes out of the area, and where are you going to be going to? Okay, for us, we will not go to a general shelter for the Red Cross, okay, because Zachary wouldn't do well in that environment. Neither would we do well in that environment, nor let alone the people exposed around him because of the autism. Okay, so you have to look at your own physical and cognitive abilities and what's going to be the healthiest environment for you to be. Could you evacuate to a friend's house on the other side of town or in a neighboring town? Okay, can you do those kind of things? And have an agreement with that family or friend and say, hey, if you need to evacuate, please come to our area as you would go to their area. And also, by the way, what things do I need to bring? What to make things more accommodating as you stay with them and support each other. So those are kinds of things you need to look at. Okay, and then also look at, if you're going to evacuate, who needs assistance and who's going to provide that assistance, and what type of assistance are we looking at. For example, if you live by yourself, okay, and you have a mobility impairment, who's going to be your transportation to evacuate? Who's your primary person? Who's your backup person that's going to be there to support you? Okay, for example, say you have a mobility impairment and you have your own vehicle. What happens if your vehicle's down, broken, something happens? Who's somebody you can call upon that can assist you? Okay, so it's a big project looking at these kind of things, but you just got to take it one little bit at a time as you develop your plan. Okay, and have two forms of communicating with these people. Primary phone number is great, cell phone, email, text messaging, or some other backup systems that you can utilize. Okay, look at what are two ways out of your neighborhood. Okay, we're creatures of habit. We have one way, and we usually go that way all the time. But what's the secondary way out? Not of your neighborhood, but also to get to a primary road. For like in our neighborhood, we have one way we usually go out. We end up on Union Hills, but if for some reason that way's blocked, what's a way that we could go and end up on Tatum Boulevard or some other way? You want to think about those kind of things before an event occurs, so you have the answer, not be at that moment trying to figure out a solution. Okay, so we're also going to be looking at, you got to look at is, what are two different ways to whomever or wherever your shelter is going to be. Okay, for us, example, our primary or our evacuation location out of town is Kelly's folks, up in Cottonwood area. What is two different ways we could get to their house? Not a primary way, because that may be blocked, but what's a secondary route to get there? Okay, we know that route, and her folks know that route too. So if we're coming up there, they know we're going to be coming up this way, or we're going to come up this other direction. So they have an idea time-wise of how long it's going to take us. Remember, in evacuation, it's going to be a slow process. Don't want to hurry. You got to be hurrying, but not pushing it too far, because you just cause more confusion and delay, cause accidents. People get angry. Tempers are going to be flaring. People could get violent. So you've got to be safe. Take your time, but yet be efficient and smooth in the process. Okay. And make sure everybody knows your evacuation locations and your shelters are where you're going to meet. Okay. Also look at picking up somebody up. Say Zachary's at his adult day program. Who's responsible for picking him up to get to that evacuation location? If it's me, my wife, Tyler, Zach's respite providers, make sure everybody knows what's going on, so if something does happen, I'm at the fire station, I'm not able to leave, Kelly's going to get him. If Kelly's not able to, she's in contact with Tyler or somebody else that's going to be picking him up and heading towards our meeting location or our evacuation location. The only way you're going to find solutions and answers to these questions is by spending some time thinking about it, talking about it with your support system, people that are there to support you, that care about you, and want you to have a healthy outcome. Okay. Make sure you have a meeting location. This is on page 18, talking about. Make sure you know a meeting location outside your home, in your neighborhood, and outside of town. Okay. So, for example, we're in the north end of Phoenix, and we had to evacuate. We have meeting locations established in, the West Valley, for example, or the northern part of the valley if we're evacuating towards, Cottonwood area where Kelly's folks live. So we have that agreement. We know where to go in the event of something's happening. Okay. So that is step 2. Making your plan, identifying your hazards. Identifying what disasters you're most prone to. And what steps you can take to mitigate, that hazard. For example, wildland fire comes through our area. We're not going to be immediately threatened by the fire itself, but the smoke. Smoke's coming through. That's not going to be healthy. So by having some filter masks that we can wear and we can put on Zachary, that's going to improve our outcome, because we have a barrier to protect us, something that's going to protect us. So just by purchasing a few, filter masks, that's helping us to have a healthier outcome by identifying that possibility. Okay, power outages. We could think power outage. How's that going to impact our quality of life and Zachary's quality of life if something happens? Okay, is it worth spending the money to get a generator? What size generator can we get by with? The smallest size, or we need to get a big, huge one to power the AC unit because of Zachary? Do we have the resources to do that? So those are the questions we have to answer as a family, as a support system. You need to do the same thing with yourself, your family, your support system, and identifying your potential hazards and what you can do to mitigate them, but also to create a healthier outcome for yourself. Okay? So, well, thanks again for taking the time watching step 2, making a plan. If you have any questions, send me an email, contact information. I'll be following right at the end. And once again, thank you, and have a safe and healthy day.